From Forex Traders Daily, this is your daily analysis with Ross Mullins, live from Richmond, Virginia.
Hello everyone, this is today's video analysis for August 22nd, 2016. I hope you had a great weekend and ready to get started trading this week. In today's video, I'm going to do a general overview of each of the U.S. currency pairs in anticipation of this week's trading. And I'm going to highlight some of the key levels that we will be looking for entry and exit opportunities. Now we have a relatively slow news calendar for this entire week, and you want to be sure to check your financial calendars for the latest releases. So let's get started here on the USDCHF, the dollar franc. We're looking at the daily time frame. For the most part, I would say if you look long term, we're going all the way back in October, November of 2015. We have seen this downward falling trend channel between the two red trend lines, the top red trend line being resistance, bottom being support. If that pattern continues to play out over the next several weeks, we might even see a continuation of the fall that we've seen for the US dollar and a turn all the way back down here to the 93s. Now, of course, there's never a guarantee of that, but wouldn't that be interesting if it continues that pattern and we continue to see the fall for the US dollar? Now, if the US dollar takes any kind of boost over the next several months, whether the Fed decides to change interest rates or not, if it takes any kind of boost, we might look for the final breakout to the top side of that pattern, and of course that would break and turn into an uptrend for the franc. So just definitely some long-term things that we want to keep an eye out for here on the dollar franc. In the most recent days, let's go ahead and zoom it in one more time, we can see it's come down off of the top of that trend channel pattern, the red trend line at the top, the blue trend line on the right hand side coming down. We challenged last week underneath the green trend line, which capped out the bottom last two lows within the pattern. We challenged underneath it all the way down to the green shaded area into the 95.30s, and then it came right back up into the orange shaded area and challenging this blue trend line again and the orange shaded area. So some interesting things happening there. I definitely think that we could be watching for this week with very little news, either a continuation of the upside, a breakout of resistance, continuation higher, or if it finds resistance, we might look for the little bit of a fall back down towards the last lows here for the franc. Let's go ahead and take it on down to the 4-hour time frame. And this is what I mean by a breakout of resistance to continue the upside. Take a look at this. We saw a significant downward slide all the way from up here at the 98.40s or so down here into the 95.30s. And then over the past several hours, since Friday really, we saw this significant rise, challenging here into the 96.40 level. Look at that period of congestion here, congestion back here on the left. So if we're going to see this go higher, if you're thinking about maybe buying for some more reversal back higher again for the US dollar, let's take a look at a breakout above 96.40. If it gets above 96.40, then we look for the turn higher back into the upper 96s towards the 9700 level, and even above that we can see it back here into the mid 97s and the yellow shaded area. So this orange zone today will be pretty critical today and maybe even into tomorrow. Stays within there, breaking above it, we look for it to go higher. Stays within there, breaks back underneath 96.20 or so, we may look for the return back lower. Interesting, the pattern set up here, the low on the left, the low in the middle. If it continues to hold a low on the right and breaks that 96.40 level, could be an inverted head and shoulders pattern that would look for a little bit of a return higher for the US franc. Taking on over to the EURUSD, the euro versus the US dollar, just the exact opposite here on the euro dollar. Long term, we've been in a range since January of 2015. We've looked at that many times in the live trade room. Now pushing higher last week into resistance highs, into the 1.1300s, and now falling back just like the franc, except the opposite. We see it falling back into support here on the euro dollar. Let's go ahead and zoom it in a couple of times here to give us a real good sense of that. There's the rise, there's the fall back into the orange zone. Again, incidentally, orange shaded area, I think the color is coincidental, but it is the orange shaded area that's our main focus for the day today. Staying within it, and if we get back above this orange zone, which is above 1.1315, we might look for the continuation back towards at least the last resistance high into the 1350s. On the downside, if it breaks underneath, if we see the sellers stay in control, breaking underneath, we'll call it 1.1290, which is the bottom of that orange zone, we're back into the yellow zone, which is into the 1230s to 40s, and that's right underneath the current market. I think that would be a very interesting move because that would also challenge the green trend line that's coming down from the top and the 100 period moving average into the low 112. So it'll be interesting to see if it does that. But clearly we've been on the rise. So I think at least if anything, right now you're likely looking for focused energy into the upside, maybe buying the support zone, targeting the blue zone again, and you know what the risk is, a breakdown of the orange zone. Let's go ahead and take it down to the 4-hour time frame. It's attempted to break down through the 1290 level so far this week, but so far unable to. I'm going to put that line right at 1290. So far been unable to break underneath there. So open and close underneath the orange zone, I think we do look for it to fall back down to the yellow zone. Staying above the orange zone or getting back above the orange zone 1315, we look for it to challenge the highs again into the blue shaded area for the euro dollar. Moving on over to the GBP USD, a little bit of a range here as well. Look at the black box down at the bottom. We're right smack in the middle of that black box. So really, relatively speaking, it can go in either direction. I think we do have a bearish bias for the currency pair, but last week was very nicely up to the upside. So definitely watching for that, and the possibility of taking a turn back to the top of our range is still there. Let's go ahead and take it in to the 4-hour time frame. Again, we're right smack in the middle. Look at that black box. We just looked at it on the daily. The yellow shader is kind of a hinge point in the middle of that wider range. We can see back here where the circles are, the blue circles, the green circle. Many times above it, finds support to go higher. Many times underneath it, finds resistance to go lower. And we're toying around with it right now. It's been above it, it's been below it, and it's just really not making any significant headway in either direction yet this week. So what we want to watch for likely is a couple of things. Above the blue shaded area, if it breaks the last high, we'll probably look for it to go back up again. Below the purple zone, we would look for it to go back down and challenge the lows. But right now, we just see it kind of waffling around in here between the blue shaded area's resistance, the purple shaded area as support, and again, that yellow shaded area is somewhat like a hinge point, if you will. Above it goes higher, below it goes lower. So if you're looking at anything, I would say most recent movement has been the buyers in control, driving it up again. If we get some positive news out of the UK at all this week, we'll look for it to go back to the blue zone or challenge the top of the range. Any negative news out of the UK, positive news out of the US this week, we would likely see this take a turn back under 1.3085 and a turn back lower once again for the GBP USD. Take it over here to the USD CAD, US dollar versus Canadian dollar. Last week we saw the breakdown of the blue trend line. Many weeks we saw it rising along that blue trend line. Last week it broke underneath it. Open and close underneath the blue trend line and the 100 period simple moving average. That's the green line coming into the chart. So very interesting today, and I think this one might be the most interesting one for the day today, is the fact that we're underneath the 100 period moving average, the blue shaded area as resistance, and the blue trend line right around the 1240.50 level. So definitely watching that as a potential resistance and the continuation lower. Of course, we want to watch those oil prices. If oil suddenly drops, that could change the direction back to the upside here for the US CAD. But right now, I think the sellers have been driving it lower. Last week, the buyers took a little bit of temporary control, but we're into resistance. As long as it's underneath that resistance, I think that's what you want to focus on. Take a look. There's your blue shaded area there. There's the long-term trend line. So as long as it's underneath that blue shaded area, I would expect it's going to go back down. The orange zone, of course, is your current support. Of course, you want to watch that as well. A breakdown of that orange zone could give you some more downside towards the yellow shaded area at the very bottom of the chart. And of course, at any time, if it breaks back above the blue trend line, we could be looking for it to go back up. Look at that orange zone today. Could be somewhat of a hinge point as well. If it breaks underneath there, we're back at the bottom. If it stays on top of it, very interesting, like the U.S. franc, we may look for a setup of an inverted head and shoulders here on the 4-hour time frame if it holds the orange zone as support. But sellers, you're watching the blue zone or under the orange zone. Buyers, we're watching this orange zone for a potential for support and a new rally higher. But again, keep an eye on those oil prices, see which direction oil decides to go this week. Moving on over to the U.S. yen, long-term downtrend, not too hard to see that with the blue trend line on the daily time frame. Let's go ahead and zoom it in several times here on the daily. Take a look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days kind of stuck in this black box down here, kind of a little period of congestion. If we're going to go short, where do you want to go short? Within a range or congestion? At the top. that gives you your lowest risk and highest reward. Well, we're very close to that today, so I would say that maybe become your focus for the day today. Take it down to the 4-hour time frame. The fact of the matter is we saw a little bit of a gap into the blue zone, but it couldn't break it. So this blue zone is maybe your very focus today, very much your focus today. If it stays under the blue zone, I think you're looking for opportunities to go short, back to the green zone or the orange zone at the bottom. Your risk, of course, is that it breaks above the blue zone and starts going higher. So if you take a short into the blue zone, stop losses should be just above it. That way you can target the green and the orange zone all the way back down. Your risk, of course, like I said, is that it breaks above 100.85 and goes higher. Keep an eye on that. I don't think we want to go long, at least right now, as long as it's underneath that blue zone. We saw resistance here. We're at resistance here. Going long just doesn't seem logical at this current moment. So going short might be your best opportunity for the day today, targeting the green or the orange zone on the way down. Your risk, of course, is above the blue shaded area for the US yen today. Taking a move on over to the AUD USD, Australian versus US dollar. I think this is very interesting for us today as well. Take a look at the green trend line. That's important for the day today. Why? Because we're challenging that as support. The pink shaded area, the green trend line, 7,600, holding as our support for the day today. If you're doing anything, I don't think you want to go short right now, because we're challenging into a significant support. Zoom it in one time on the daily. Again, you're looking at that green trend line, the pink shaded area up here. We're at support. Not a great place to go short, because you're at that significant support along with the trend line. Only if it breaks through that, if it gets through, let's call it 7,600 right now, if it gets through there, opens and closes under the pink zone, do you look for it to go lower? If you're looking to go short, it has to break the pink zone or come back up to the blue shaded area, 76.4550, as resistance. I think as long as it sits on top of the pink zone today, that's a buyer opportunity here for the Australian dollar. 4-hour time frame doesn't really change it, just gives us a really a zoomed in view here. Again, sitting on top of that pink zone, not a great place to go short. You need to go back up to the pink zone, or sorry, the blue zone, or break through the pink zone if you're looking to go short. If it does, then you look for it back down here to the yellow, or maybe even all the way down to the orange zone at the bottom of the chart. Buying, though, becomes a very interesting scenario, especially on an intraday basis here, right around 7,600. If you're looking for that, let it get as close as possible to 76. You know what the risk is at that point. The risk is a break underneath. So your stop losses would be under the pink zone if you buy the pink zone, 7,600. Target the blue zone, or even higher, back up here to the green or the yellow shaded areas up into the highest peak highs of the chart. So very interesting there. Something else we looked at last week, and I'll just put a couple of trend lines here. We see this falling pattern right here, and we're at the very bottom of that little channel. So again, another clue that I don't think you want to go short right now for the Australian dollar. More likely looking for intraday buys into 7,600 for the Australian dollar. Moving on into the NZD USD, New Zealand dollar, US dollar. This is one very tough to go long. I think it's very tough to buy this currency pair right now because we're at the top of the uptrend. Take a look. The black trend line, we've been in this trend all year long, really, since you go back to last year, September, October of last year. We've been in the rise, but really since January of this year, so for the past 8 months or so, we have been in the rise along the black trend line. We're at the very top of the trend. And by the way, it's found a lot of resistance at the top of this trend. Zooming in a couple of times, take a look. This blue box that you see here and the black boxes at the top, we have found a lot of resistance at 7,300 or so for the New Zealand dollar. So tough to buy it unless it takes a dip to support, which it has done today. We're dipping into support. You might have an intraday opportunity to buy this currency pair at the bottom of this little black box that is congestion right now. 72.45, 72.20 is an opportunity. Again, we looked at this last week. You see this red trend line right here, or that red line representing potential stop loss. If you buy it, that's your potential stop loss, because right now you know you don't want it to break underneath 72.20, because if it does, it's likely going to go back down towards at least this blue shaded area right here. So you don't want it to break the green zone if you buy it. Target the pink zone, of course, as your targets for buying, and of course, anytime it breaks above the pink zone, we'll look for a continuation of the uptrend. The risk here, like I said, is that it breaks the green zone and goes lower. So sellers, let's talk about the sellers first. Sellers are looking at the pink zone, and under the green zone is opportunities to go short. Buyers, of course, are very interested in this green shaded area today, right around 72.45, 72.20 for the New Zealand dollar this first part of the week.
From Forex Traders Daily, this has been your daily analysis with Ross Mullins. If you would like to get Ross's analysis on all the currency pairs he's watching and all the trades he takes today, join him in his live trade room by clicking on the link below. Please leave any comments you have about today's video in the comments section below.